It started with silence. Not the peaceful kind that lingers between people who understand each other, but the heavy, sour kind that chokes a room. The kind of silence that makes you wonder if something had already ended long before you noticed. For months, my wife and I existed in the same house like strangers, sharing air, sharing space, but nothing else. Conversations were reduced to logistical necessities: groceries, bills, work schedules. Intimacy had vanished like a fog burned off by the sun. No arguments, no explanations, just the slow unraveling of everything we once had. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't attentive enough. Maybe work had consumed too much of me. I started buying flowers on random Wednesdays, cooked her favorite meals, took her to the restaurant where we had our first date. She smiled, thanked me. But there was a vacant echo in her eyes that never left. When I touched her hand, she flinched like it was foreign. I stopped trying after a while. There's only so long you can fight alone before you realize the battle was never mutual. Then, out of nowhere, she started talking about having a baby. It wasn't framed as a question, more like an assumption, as if the months of avoidance hadn't happened, as if our disconnection was a bad dream that she'd now decided to wake up from. She talked about names, daycares, her friend's baby shower, and how it really got her thinking. She'd curl up next to me on the couch, place her head on my chest, and start scrolling through Pinterest nursery ideas like we were already expecting. The whiplash made my stomach churn. Something didn't add up. When you've been with someone long enough, you start to recognize the patterns, what feels real and what feels rehearsed. Her sudden affection wasn't love, it was performance. I could feel the script beneath her fingertips. And for the first time, I started listening, not to her words, but to her gaps, to the forced smiles, the nervous glances at her phone, the way she'd jump when I entered the room while she was texting. A picture was forming, slowly, like a Polaroid under pressure, so I started watching, not obsessively, just enough to gather the pieces. I noticed the phone always flipped screen down now, the bathroom breaks that conveniently included her phone, the late meetings that always ended at odd hours, the dead battery excuses, the laughter that wasn't meant for me. I didn't say anything, didn't confront. I took notes. I logged the nights, the times, the places she said she'd be and where she actually was. I checked locations, receipts, call logs. Her patterns didn't just shift, they disappeared. There's a numbness that comes with realizing someone you love is lying to your face. It's not rage at first, it's disbelief. A sick sort of calm, like the eye of a storm. You don't want it to be true, so you dig deeper, hoping the truth will redeem them. But the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. She was seeing someone else. I won't name him. He wasn't the villain in this story. He didn't make vows to me. But he was real. They met at her gym. At least that's what the photo suggested. Him, with his perfect smile and obnoxious confidence, posing with her on a hiking trail she told me she did alone. I found their messages too, hidden behind encrypted apps and renamed contacts. They weren't careful, but they were confident. Confident I'd never look. Confident I'd never leave. They underestimated the silence. By the time I confirmed the affair, I was no longer heartbroken. I was focused, strategic. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I prepared. Quietly. Precisely. Every shared account, every financial link, every legal detail, reviewed, logged, and corrected. I started seeing a lawyer 2 towns over, someone with no connections to our social circle. We met in early mornings over coffee and contracts. She helped me draw up an exit plan that would dismantle the life we'd built without a single confrontation. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. I wanted peace. But I also wanted truth. I compiled everything, every screenshot, message, timestamp, GPS pin. Not to use as a weapon, but as proof. A record. A final, undeniable summary of the fracture she created. And when I had it all, I placed it in a folder. A literal folder. Beige, neutral, professional. I slid it into my drawer and waited. She kept up the baby charade for weeks. I played along, smiled, kissed her forehead. Let her fantasize about cribs and strollers and lullabies she'd never sing. Because when the time came, I wanted her to feel the weight of what she threw away. On the morning I planned to leave, she made pancakes. It was almost funny. She rarely cooked breakfast, said it wasn't her thing. But that day, she woke up early, wore that old college hoodie she knew I liked, and poured batter like we were newlyweds again. I ate in silence. Not out of bitterness, but out of reverence. I was witnessing a performance in its final act, the nervous laughter, the exaggerated affection, the fake future. And all of it, was about to collapse. When she left for her brunch with coworkers, I stood at the door, watched her car disappear, and felt the calm I hadn't felt in months. No anxiety, no pain, just clarity. I walked upstairs, opened the drawer, and pulled out the folder. Everything was in there. Bound, organized, dated. It read more like a post-mortem than evidence, a clean autopsy of a marriage that died without ceremony. I placed the folder on the kitchen table. Next to it, the key to the storage unit I'd rented last week. Inside it, everything I had moved out quietly while she worked late or left early. Every drawer, every shelf, every corner of our life together that once held my presence. Emptied. On the table, I also left my wedding ring. I didn't write a note. Didn't leave an insult. She didn't deserve my words. Instead, I scheduled an email to send at exactly 4 p.m., the same time her brunch was supposed to end. The subject line? You already know why. In it, I attached copies of the evidence. Nothing emotional, just data. The same way she had treated me for the past year. Like a non-factor. I became a mirror, and showed her what that truly looked like. Then I walked out of the house for the last time. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I drove away and deleted our shared playlist from my phone. At 4:17 p.m., she called. I didn't answer. At 4:31, a second call. Then a voicemail. A shaky voice, a demand for explanation, then panic. I deleted it. By the time 5 p.m. hit, the texts had shifted tone, from confusion to desperation to rage. She called me cruel, said I was overreacting, claimed it wasn't what it looked like, that it was just emotional, that it meant nothing. But it meant enough to break us. She tried reaching out to my sister, to my friends, even my boss. I told everyone in advance not to engage. This wasn't a shared story anymore. It was mine. And I was reclaiming it. A week later, the divorce papers were served. Her response came delayed, loaded with excuses, paragraphs about regret, memories, pleas. I didn't reply. The real punishment wasn't rage or retaliation. It was absence. The cold, clean erasure of my presence from her life. That was something no apology could fix. No lie could undo. No baby could fill. She destroyed our marriage in secret. I ended it in daylight. Ready for part 3? Want to know what happened after the divorce? What she did next? And how karma handled the rest? Let me know in the comments, and I'll share everything.